From Istanbul, Turkey, this is Josh Friedman coming to you on election night here in Istanbul. Only Istanbul, no elections or no voting taking place elsewhere in Turkey. As I was discussing from Haliç, the metro bridge earlier today, a beautiful setting along the Golden Horn in Istanbul. Today was a rerun election, a rerun of the March 31st mayoral election here in Istanbul. And we have a pretty clear result now. Granted, it's not final, it's not official, but I'll cut straight to the chase with 99% of votes counted, according to the state-run Anadolu agency, which is publishing election results, as is typically the case on election night in Turkey. According to Anadolu, with 99.37% of votes counted, Ekrem İmamoğlu has received 54.03% of the vote. Binali Yildirim has received 45.09%. İmamoğlu is the opposition candidate. He belongs to the CHP, the CHP, Turkey's main opposition party, while Yildirim is the former Turkish prime minister, close ally of Turkish President Erdogan. And Yildirim belongs to the ruling AKP, the AKP. And it looks like Yildirim, and more significantly Erdogan, have suffered a resounding defeat. Again, these results are not final, but by all accounts, it really is final. Not by all accounts, but by most accounts. Turkish media are reporting that Yildirim has already conceded defeat to İmamoğlu, and with a 9% lead, with 99% of votes counted, it sure seems like we have a clear result on election night. Granted, who knows what could happen. There wasn't supposed to be an election taking place today. There was an election on March 31st, which, as I explained earlier, was ultimately annulled after protest by Erdogan, Yildirim, and the AKP. But the result has come out even more in İmamoğlu's favor on this second time around. I see a couple people are joining me. Please, if you would, leave a comment letting me know if you can hear me all right. I know there's some background music. I'm broadcasting live from an undisclosed cafe here in Istanbul, and hopefully the connection is okay. It seems all right on my part. I don't seem to be noticing any disruptions, but if you are, please let me know, and if you could, please let me know about the volume. And thank you for anyone who is giving this a like, a share, and for, of course, anyone who is tuning in. I hope young generation in Turkey, Black, Sean, and Kurdish vote changed. The Kurdish vote is something very significant. Oh, that must have been Black Sea. If I saw Black Sean change the vote, but Black Sea, that, if you want to elaborate on that comment, please. I was discussing earlier how the Kurdish vote could very well swing this election. I have been going around town, not speaking with a ton of people, but I have spoken with quite a few Kurds, and I was getting the overwhelming impression, at least from those with whom I was speaking. I live in Istanbul. Everybody are very happy now. Sorry for my English. No problem about your English. No worries. Feel free to leave a comment in whatever kind of English you speak, although my Turkish is not so good. But I would like to say teşekkürler Erdem for joining me this evening, and I do hope to venture over to Taksim Square shortly, as I expect there to be celebrations. But if you know of a better place for me to go, I'm open to that as well. As I was saying, I have spoken with some Kurds here in Istanbul, and I was getting the impression that they were supporting Imamoglu as a protest vote against Erdogan and the AKP. Comments saying they called Black Shan people Pontic Byzantines. They're angry because of that. I assume you're referring to Black Sea people along Turkey's Black Sea coast, or at least who come from Turkey's Black Sea coast. Istanbul being the largest city in the country and the economic capital and basically the capital of everything except politics. Although, as I was discussing earlier, it's by and large said and believed he who controls Istanbul controls Turkey. So is this a huge scare for Erdogan? I guess we'll be delving into that over the course of the night. I'm frankly a little, let's say, bummed that I'm taking on the role of everything tonight, the anchor, reporter, commentator. I'd rather not be playing the commentator or analyst role. I'd rather be hosting and hosting some sort of conversation and interview. Who knows, maybe we could set that up later. Chime in if you'd like to meet up tonight in Istanbul. If anyone's tuned in from Istanbul, maybe we could meet up. I'm open to a lot of possibilities. I would like to have a partner broadcasting alongside me. What do you think of the future of Erdogan? All right, well, I guess I will be playing commentator tonight. What I not so much glossed over it. Yes, they gain money from corruption. Crossing the bridge is 200 Turkish lira, $50. First, on Erdogan. I did not discuss the economy in my election day report today from a different bridge, the Metro bridge. And that is a major issue. So Erdogan and the AKP, for the first decade of their rule, oversaw incredible economic growth and development. And from what I actually saw, I was getting blasted with Yildirim campaign commercials and advertisements, largely on social media over the past few days. It seemed like they were really touting all of the development that has taken place in Turkey under AKP rule. And Erdogan and the AKP have been in power for about 17 years now, and there have been major infrastructure projects that have been completed. The country has really modernized over that time. However, over the past few years, the growth has not been so rapid, and actually at the end of last year into the beginning of this year, it wasn't growth at all. Turkey fell into a recession. And more notably from my perspective has been the decline of the lira. So the lira over the past 4 years or so has gone from something around 2 to 3 to the dollar to around 6 to the dollar. And if you're a Turk, if you're making money in liras and the lira is rapidly losing value against the dollar and the prices are increasing rapidly, then I would be concerned about that. You're probably hurting. And to me, the economy, the lack of growth in recent years and particularly months, and the devaluation of the lira has to have some role in what's going on right now, and it's got to be a huge concern with regard to the future. Now, this might not be a prognosis, there might not be a prediction as to what I think is the future of Erdogan, and I don't know exactly, but I'll explore some possibilities, and I would appreciate whoever is watching to chime in with your thoughts as well. I was here 1 year ago, it was almost to the day, I think, when the last national election took place, in which Erdogan was elected Turkey's first executive president, and I was saying at the time that it seemed like the Turkish economy could possibly take a nosedive. I don't think I put it in those words, but I said on my election night report that Erdogan had really incredibly consolidated power, but it seemed like the Turkish economy was running out of gas or was oversteamed, or whatever phrase or term you want to use to describe it, and that indeed was the case. Months following that election, months following Erdogan formally becoming Turkey's executive president, the economy went into recession. I haven't been here over that time. Unfortunately, I only, except for one brief airport stop, I hadn't been in Turkey. We have economy which controlling by Erdogan's son-in-law. Yeah, that's interesting that Erdogan's son-in-law is which minister? The minister of economy, or is it? I believe it's economy. Please fact check me on that, or I'll fact check myself. But Erdogan's minister is Erdogan's minister. Erdogan's son-in-law is a minister here, and yeah. So I can't say that I have a good. Have you ever been in Istanbul? Yes, I've been in Istanbul many times, more than 10 times or more, something like that. But I had not been in Istanbul other than a brief stop in the airport between last June's election and this week. So I can't say that I have such a great sense of the sentiments of the city and the society over the past year. And that's why I look first and foremost to the economy. But for years, Turkey has been very divided for and against Erdogan. Erdogan's done a masterful job of winning election after election after election, including the big referendum that changed the system of governance from a parliamentary system to a presidential system. But at the same time, there have been many people for years and years who totally turned off by him, who don't like him at all. But Erdogan's really succeeded in that polarized environment. Now, I don't know if merely being polarized and merely continuing to appeal to your base is going to be enough for Erdogan to maintain his grip on power. I guess looking forward, now Imamoglu becomes the primary individual challenger to Erdogan. I don't know if Imamoglu will be running for president, but I guess at this point, if you're looking ahead to what it would be 2024 when Erdogan will be up for re-election, then that's way in advance. A lot can change between now and then, but I guess right now it would seem like Imamoglu might be the candidate with the best shot at taking him down. Although, who knows? So much could change between now and then. Interesting things to watch. So how does Erdogan respond to this in the interim? I guess a major event that we could look to. What do you think about the S-400 crisis and the East Mediterranean? Actually, S-400, I talked in depth about. S-400, I talked in depth about on my Bilderberg wrap-up stream about a week ago. Maybe we'll get, if people want to discuss the S-400, why not go there? But point I was making is that, I guess, looking back to the coup attempt, that was last major crisis, although Turkey's kind of been full of crises in the last several years, and Erdogan's response to it was basically the iron fist. No velvet glove, just iron fist. So I guess some people are now speculating that another crackdown could be coming in the aftermath of an opposition victory here in Istanbul. I guess there's speculation there could be continued crackdown on the press, on academics, on basically people in all institutions who might oppose Erdogan's rule. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that is a possibility. Maybe Erdogan is gonna rebrand himself as someone accepting of, in this instance, defeat, and in general, oh, no problem. You want to join me? I need some.
How can I help?
Well, you'd have to plug in here, but it's kind of challenging because I've got. You want to comment on the election?
Yeah, I would like to comment.
All right, sit down for a minute. Come over here. I'm trying to bring in a friend, so let's see if you guys let me know if you can hear me. So do you think there's a possibility for early I always think there's a possibility for early elections. What I was saying, as soon as the election was, as soon as, yeah, we're live. As soon as the election results were nullified, this election was nullified, I was commenting on how Turkey seems to me is in a never-ending campaign mode. Election season never ends. Early elections wouldn't surprise me. When they're coming, I don't know. Okay, you guys, I'm introducing my friend. Let me know if you can hear us. I don't know how this works with splitting the earphones, but we're gonna try. So please comment.
Hello.
Halil. This is Halil.
Are you guys hearing me? So this is Halil from Istanbul.
Let's see if they comment. Let us know if you can hear us. But in the meanwhile, so Halil, what are your thoughts on today's election and the results?
The results has been highly Jesus
Sorry, you can go.
satisfied. So we were expecting this results, and people are already getting out on the street. They're doing cheers. Everyone is so happy and chuffed, and we're expecting pretty good consequences from beginning till the future situation, and everyone expecting to get better and better, starting from this 2019 elections. And what we expect from the government that certain main things got changed, and so the people will be more open-minded, will have more wide opinions. When when the population, the major of population asks for any, request or whatever, like a constitution.
So my understanding is that you're happy
Yeah,
Imamalu
I'm pretty happy.
won, and you think that means they're going to be. And please, guys, comment if you can or cannot hear us. You think that there are going to be major changes in Istanbul.
Exactly.
Now, how do you think Erdogan will respond to this? Will he allow the city to change so that it becomes
Well, considering
more open, more inclusive, or how you were describing it?
considering he is being the prime minister of Turkey, I suppose he's gonna highly support him, because so Imamoglu will be the
Mayor.
yeah, mayor of Istanbul, and Mr. Erdogan, he's the general mayor for the entire country. So I suppose he's gonna support it a lot, and which will effectively contribute our cities. We will, I think we will get better in any terms.
But to play devil's advocate, Erdogan really, really, really wanted Imamoglu to lose. He wanted Yildirim.
He sort of wanted him to lose because he was another party, which was leading party. You see what I mean, right?
Yeah, that Erdogan.
Yeah. Well, this will make him.
AKP.
This would make him wants it a lot, to eagerness. But I don't really suppose once he lose, he's gonna be a rival. This is what I'm saying, because he's already the prime minister, so nothing's gonna change. This is a specific election for Istanbul, not concerning any other cities. This is my point.
Well, I think one of the reasons why some people think that Erdogan might have a angry reaction to this or not work so well with Imamoglu is that a lot of people view Istanbul as representative of the whole country politically. Like which way
Yeah, but
Istanbul
that's
goes,
another
that's
table.
the way Turkey goes. So if you lose Istanbul, you lose Turkey.
Yeah, I see what you're meaning. So Istanbul is almost a quarter of population of the entire country. So major of the people lives here, and so all we have, let's say, all the factories, companies, and all these major territories and whatsoever, they're based on in Istanbul. So it's like the heart of the Turkey, the entire Turkey. So once you win the Istanbul, it means that you have an eye through the entire country, and so you.
Can you hold that thought for 1 second? I
Sure.
want you to respond to two comments we just got.
Yes, please.
One comment is saying that I believe he's referring to Erdogan and the AKP were calling Imamoglu a terrorist.
No.
And that made people angry. Do you think that had an effect on anything?
I don't think so. I'm not agree with that.
Okay, and the other, here's a comment in Turkish. You can read it. It's very small though. The other comment in English was that 55% of people indeed do not, actually I'm forgetting whether it was 55% like Imamoglu or 55% do not like Erdogan. But do you think that's, let's say Erdogan, do you think it's true that indeed 55%
Yes.
of people here do not like Erdogan?
I wouldn't say what reason we had.
We're friends. We can get a little closer.
This is through Turkey or the U.S.
It's everywhere. We're live on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm supposed to leave soon. So,
Leave whenever you want to leave.
yeah, maybe right now
Okay.
because they're calling me.
Okay. No problem.
Thank you very much.
Teşekkürler Erdem.
Rica ederim.
Okay, guys. I hope you could hear us as I brought in a guest analyst. And all right, so getting back to where we were, and I was, from what I recall, discussing a little, yeah, I guess, yeah, you could hear us. So I was discussing some potential responses from Erdogan to this result. And I think I'm a little more skeptical than our guest is. I don't think Erdogan is just going to work hand in hand with Imamoglu. Imamoglu is a clear threat to Erdogan's power. Now, does that mean a crackdown's coming? I don't know. Does it mean Erdogan is going to totally reform himself and that he's going to open up to opposition and work with them and not call them terrorists? Yeah, next time. What's the yeah, next time comment? I don't know what yeah, next time refers to. I would never bet against Erdogan. He's a master politician. I'm sure he's got more than 5, 10, or 15 tricks up his sleeve. Imamoglu wants to negotiate with Erdogan. He said that again today. Yeah, so I guess it's going to be interesting to see how Imamoglu and Erdogan work together or counterbalance one another, because obviously neither one is in a perfect position. Imamoglu and the JHP, I mean, next time Imamoglu going to be our president. So we already have someone predicting. So do you think Imamoglu runs in 2024? And do you think, okay, so yeah, you're saying that you think Imamoglu will run in 2024. Is it 2024? I forget the date. Maybe it's 2013. You can correct me on that if I'm off. And that, so all right, we have one commenter saying he thinks Imamoglu is the next president. And I would guess that 2023, indeed. So yeah, I would guess that it's scary. Maybe Erdogan's not scared. I can't get in his mind. But now there's a legitimate threat to Erdogan's rule over Turkey, and now some people are going to be exploring the possibility. Erdogan is an Islamist, anti-nationalist, don't like Ataturk, but new generation Turkey hate Islamists, and Islam, new Turkish generation is. Okay, so the comment I was getting seems to be discussing that the younger generation in Turkey, which largely, I guess, is the case in Istanbul and the major cities. I don't know about countrywide. I've traveled around Turkey somewhat, and I don't find, let's say, the rural areas to be very secular and anti-Erdogan. But we have a commenter saying that the new generation, the young generation in Turkey is very secular, is not Islamist, and that Erdogan is the complete opposite. And that's something that we haven't really gone into in either of the broadcasts today. We have just 3% popularity when he began, but Erdogan's and others make insults his popularity very highly. Everyone, yeah. So I think the terrorist comments and the insults is worth discussing. If nothing else, it seems like Erdogan's going to have to change things up a bit politically with regard to all of the attacks, the ad hominems. It doesn't seem like that has played so well in this election. Polarization in the past has worked for Erdogan. Maybe it will continue to work in the future, but this is a sign that it's not working. It seems like a lot of people are very turned off by Erdogan, the AKP, and their supporters just attacking Imamoglu, and they said Pontic rum for him because he's from Black Sea. Sorry, I don't get the Black Sea reference. I need to travel to Trabzon. I haven't been to the... I want to go there desperately. I've been to the Black Sea, but not in Turkey. But yeah, it seems like there are a lot of people turned off by the rampant insults against Imamoglu and the Turkish opposition in general. So yeah, Erdogan, he's got, I'm sure, tons of tricks up his sleeves. He's a masterful politician. You mean they call Imamoglu as Greek origin? Oh, okay. So yeah, that's an insult here in Turkey. Turks and Greeks don't always get along so well. But yeah, so Erdogan's, I studied medieval history. I had to realize that the same war horses are still doing their ego monstrous power games today. Only today they operate anonymously according to zeitgeist. Erdogan and the AKP need some new tactics. Now, part of this could very well be that Yildirim is no Erdogan, and that Yildirim is not a dynamic politician, and he doesn't mobilize people and get people excited. However, the whole power structure ultimately leads into occult areas. As always, if you do not understand, then you play blind cow. All right, the occult comes up in some of my broadcasts, especially as of late, because of Bilderberg. I'm interested, but I don't have anything to report on with regard to the occult. You can send me emails about the occult. Yeah, so Erdogan, masterful politician. Yildirim, not so. In fact, Yildirim was basically put in place as a placeholder as prime minister. He was put in place as prime minister to be the guy who gets rid of the prime minister's post, and that indeed happened. So I don't know if the AKP miscalculated in trotting him out as their candidate. Yildirim more better than Erdogan. Well, I mean, I guess if you hate Erdogan, then maybe you view Yildirim as the lesser of two evils. No one hate Yildirim in Turkey. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but he lost because of Erdogan. Okay, so that's an interesting comment. Someone saying that, no, this isn't a reflection of Yildirim as a politician, it's a reflection of Erdogan hatred. Well, there's certainly a big backlash against Erdogan, and it's going to be very interesting to see what becomes of this backlash. There are going to be a lot of Western pundits. They're probably already at it. I haven't been checking yet, but there are going to be a lot of Western pundits saying this is the beginning of the end for Erdogan. To be honest, I like Yildirim as CHP supporter. Oh, so that's interesting. So this commenter is saying that he does support the opposition, that he does support Imamoglu's party, yet Yildirim still has appeal to him, and that he hates Erdogan, not Yildirim. And I guess it was kind of interesting also how there was crossover the other way, with Imamoglu being said to be a religious man, appealing to some more conservative types. I guess likewise it came up earlier about the Kurds. I don't remember if I addressed it or not. Maybe we should go into the Kurds now. Yeah, I think I did address it. I was saying that among the Kurds I was speaking with around town, they were overwhelmingly supportive of Imamoglu as Imamoglu secular person. Okay, I might be off on that. Feel free to chime in. Yes, he's a good Muslim, but also secular. Okay, yeah. So it's very easy to misuse or get confused with terms with regard to being religious and secular. For those who are tuning in from other countries, Erdogan did this because he wants no one who share his power. They did same to economic ministers. Erdogan, whoever just left that comment, Erdogan did what? You're saying Erdogan did this because he doesn't want to share his power. I don't know exactly what you're saying. Are you saying that Erdogan sabotaged it for Yildirim? I was briefly. I was about to say that Western pundits. I don't know what that means. He mean why he lose? Yeah, so there are going to be lots and lots of Western pundits speculating now over whether this is the beginning of the end for Erdogan. Now we're getting a little special snowflake giving JHP love. I was saying, for those tuning in from other countries, to just very concisely explain, the CHP, the JHP, the Republican Party, that is the secular party that's molded after Ataturk, the founder of modern secular Turkey, whereas the AKP, Erdogan's party, the Justice and Development Party, is very much an Islamist party. Although it's been interesting to see somewhat in this election cycle, and definitely from some of the comments coming in, how there's crossover, and we have communists in they're trying to rename the city. Yeah, there's a whole spectrum of political views in this country, and often someone's commenting how one city's communists are trying to take over. Politics makes for strange bedfellows, and that's often the case in Turkey. And as I was saying, with you have Kurds supporting JHP as a vote against Erdogan. Some of the Kurds I talked to, they said, "Oh no, by no means would we support the politics of the CHP." And many Kurds, although the views can vary dramatically, but there are some Kurdish, let's say, communist, socialist aligned movements. Yes, true. Yes, I mean, the point here is that we have a lot of communism is the same as capitalism. I don't agree on that. Both could fail under bad leaders. We have many examples worldwide of also capitalist failed states. We can debate that in the comment stream. I'm refreshing the Anadolu page and no new updates. I'm going to briefly scan for news. For those just tuning in, if you haven't heard, Ekrem İmamoğlu, the now leader of Turkey's opposition, and apparently once again the mayor of Istanbul, has won the rerun election. What I mean is really ignorant to think communist state will fail only because the USA told. I'm not getting into the communist capitalist debate right now. I'm trying to stick to Turkey. And remind me if I haven't addressed your questions. Like there was talk about the S-400 earlier. We can go back to S-400 and geopolitics as it relates to Turkey. İmamoğlu 54.03%, Yildirim 45.09%. That's with 99.37% of the votes counted, according to the state Anadolu news agency. Yildirim has already conceded. I'm going to see if there are any other major headlines that I should glance over at the moment. Well, we will support Erdogan for S-400. So that, For those who are not familiar with the S400 issue, and you know what, that ties back into the economy. That's something I should have discussed earlier. Amid this devaluation of the lira, there's one major aspect of it has been the clash between Ankara and Washington, the clash between the Turkish government and the US government. That has not been helping the lira. We do not care. Yes, that's a matter of state. And Turkey and the U.S. have been clashing over a variety of issues over the past several years. Maybe we do not like him, but we still support S400. Yeah, I'd be interested. Anyone here in Turkey who's watching and commenting, I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on the S400. For the general public, the S400 is a Russian missile defense system that Turkey is currently. What do you think about Iran? There's so much going on with Iran. Maybe we'll get into that. First, the S400. So Turkey is in the process of purchasing this S400 from Russia, and that has enraged the US and NATO. As I was reporting on from Switzerland, where I was covering the Bilderberg conference, this came up at this year's Bilderberg conference, according to Selva Demiralp, a Turkish economist who attended the conference and wrote an article for Turkish BBC, and it ran in Hurriyet Daily News in English, discussing how at Bilderberg the S400 was discussed. Joshua, you should visit my home country, Azerbaijan. You'll love the capital. I've long wanted to come to Baku. Hopefully that can happen sometime in the near future. A lot going on in the Caucasus right now. Maybe I could take a trip out there. I don't know if it's going to work out so well. But yeah, the S-400 is a big geopolitical issue right now. It's created a huge fracture within NATO between Turkey and basically everyone else. We can take out Azer if U.S. declare war to U.S. is supporting terrorist PKK and give them weapons, so it's better than getting S-400, not F-35. Interesting that those sentiments are not coming from an Erdogan supporter, but if indeed Turkey or a majority of people in Turkey are supportive of the S-400, are still very upset with the U.S. for supporting the Syrian Kurds, whom the Turkish government basically says is the same thing as the PKK, the terrorist group in Turkey and neighboring states that wages war basically against Turkey. Turks hating U.S. politics in the Middle East because of that weapon problem. Yeah, so what I'm getting into is there is a huge divide between Turkey and the U.S. And if indeed these comments are representative of the views of Turkey as a whole, or the majority, dude, you need to understand some Turkish people are patriotic people that are like, maybe we don't like Erdogan continues. Yeah, I do agree that by and large Turks are very patriotic. I don't think everyone here is very patriotic, but the country is probably more patriotic than most, and I kind of want to be outside right now watching the celebrations, because regardless who wins, people love to go out and celebrate with their flags, like Belgian protests. So let's try to wrap up the S-400 issue, which is delving into all kinds of things. To me, this is a major issue going forward, because if this purchase goes through, then that triggers U.S. sanctions, possibly sanctions from the West as a whole, against Turkey. And that's not going to make things any better for the lira, in my opinion. And that could continue to erode Imam said not celebration, so for that, yeah, please, because I'm not outside, I'm inside broadcasting in this makeshift studio. If you got any updates about the celebrations, I just love watching them, but maybe I could be of more value to you by being here in this makeshift studio reporting live on election nights, but I could also broadcast live from, say, Taksim. Maybe I'll do that later on. We'll see. But yeah, going forward, the geopolitical rift between Turkey and the U.S. and Turkey and the rest. Wish Turkey become more democratic, less religious, but not work with Trump's USA. The USA and EU have done very bad to our country, and the reason Erdogan stayed in power. Hope we can become independent simply. Yeah, so I would say there's a possibility moving forward that Turkey winds up out of NATO. It's not, by no means is that for sure going to happen, but there's a huge rift between Turkey and the US within NATO, and based on what I was garnering from Bilderberg, it seems like there's not just a rift between the US and Turkey over the S-400, but a rift between Turkey and everyone else in NATO. People do not want out NATO, we just want some respect. So yeah, it's nice to hear Turkish sentiments on this issue. This issue is very divisive. It's got grand geopolitical implications. It's got economic implications. As I was saying, if there's continued fighting between the U.S. and Turkey, in my opinion, that's bad news for the lira, and continued devaluation of the lira, I would venture to guess, would mean continued problems for the Turkish economy in general, and I would think Erdogan, moving forward, going back, the USA should stop trying to be so imperialistic. A lot of comments voicing frustrations with U.S. interventions around the world, and that comes at a time where this week apparently we are 10 minutes away from war between the U.S. and Iran. Inflation, someone commenting inflation. To me, inflation is a huge issue. NATO. Personally speaking, if my money was devaluing, Josh, I hate politics, but what's your take on? Oh my gosh, what's asking me? What's my take on Armenia and Azerbaijan and Nagorno-Karabakh? I've only been to Armenia. I have not been to Azerbaijan. I'd love to visit Azerbaijan. LOL. I'm a pretty neutral observer with regard to that. I did enjoy my short time spent in Armenia. Where were we? Inflation. To me, inflation is a huge issue that can't be overlooked. Someone's saying neutral is best. Well, no one's entirely neutral, but if you're asking me for, like, if I'm taking sides within this region where conflicts, say, between Turkey and Armenia and Azerbaijan, etc., I don't have a dog in the fight. Okay, Josh, no pressure, LOL. Much love. I'd love to come to Azerbaijan. Slice it in two-part like Cyprus. So yeah, there's another one. I have actually been to both sides of Cyprus, but I've only spent a matter of minutes on the north side. I crossed from the Greek side to the Turkish side in Nicosia, which was fun, but I didn't really get much of a perspective of what it's like on the north side. Although it's interesting we bring up Cyprus. Cyprus is in the news. That relates to energy resources in the region. It's another point of conflict. I guess it's worth mentioning that I don't view this as a main reason why support has eroded for Erdogan. I think the comments we're getting are much more reflective of why support has eroded for Erdogan. But back in the Davutoglu prime minister days or whatnot, the policy basically went from Turkey having no enemies to the surrounding countries being nothing but enemies. If you ask me, it's all BS. Only winners are the rulers who hide behind the curtain. Yeah, a lot of people share that sentiment, that there are people behind the curtain pulling the strings, although it seems like in Turkey in recent years, power is really concentrated in one man's hands. I was saying there has been a shift, and it kind of goes back and forth. Turkey has no enemies. Turkey has nothing but enemies. That's oversimplifying things, way oversimplifying things. I know, to Turkey not having so many enemies, to Turkey now making friends with Russia, but that gets very complicated because they're competing interests, and things could turn in an instant, as they did when Turkey shot down the Russian jet. But Turkey makes somewhat, or has some rapprochement with Russia, and that creates problems with the US. So Turkey's in a very delicate situation, and I say it's delicate because all these geopolitical problems continue to have an impact. To be honest, we need to be friends with our neighbors, even with Israel. That would be nice. From my perspective, and I'd love to say bring in Ms. Demi Ralp, someone who's a real economist here. Russia isn't our friend. I agree. Siri too. Comments coming in. From my perspective, the continued geopolitical tensions continue to weigh on the economy, and particularly the lira. I tend to view things maybe in more of an economic perspective than a lot of political analysts, and I don't really want to be playing the role of the analyst here. As I was saying at the beginning, I'd rather play the role of the reporter, the studio host, the moderator, whatever you call it. But I guess tonight I am playing all those roles. I guess I'm the jack of all trades. But yeah, I was saying that the geopolitical issues, to me, weigh on the LOL. Yeah, I agree. LOL. Weigh on the economy. Now, having been coming here repeatedly over the past several years, I'm not going to say, Turkey's in for economic collapse. No, things aren't that bad. There's just because Turkey fell into recession, the staggering growth numbers came to an end, and there's been major inflation. I don't have doomsday. People not care, right? People not care about what? I don't have doomsday predictions at all for the Turkish economy, and in the Zach of all trades. Oh, hi Zach. I recognize that username. Thanks for joining on this impromptu election night broadcast here in plus 24% interest rate. Yeah, that's interesting. We could go into monetary policy. Turkey has had a much different monetary trajectory than the West in recent years in many regards. Your comments are spot on. I just want to add something. The original local elections were not too much of a surprise nor a big loss for Erdogan. Okay, so, all right, let's forget my comments on monetary policy. Interesting comments. So, yeah, you know, what changed was not the vote shares, but our political system, and now we shifted towards a two-party system like in the US, which enabled... that's a very interesting comment. Thank you for the comment about the two-party political system. That hasn't been something I've been discussing, although it's very apparent. Opposition to come together against Erdogan rather gaining this loss of votes. This re-election is a really big loss for him because now the vote shares increased. Okay, so, yeah, I find it interesting, and chime in with the comments because I'm not up to date on all the trends, but there was a clear multi-party system here. Going back a couple years, the Nationalist Party was not really aligned with the ruling AKP, and Erdogan kind of brought the Nationalist Party under his thumb and formed this alliance. And on the other hand, the opposition was not united at all whatsoever. If we go back to June 2015, which was something I wanted to touch on earlier, Nationalist Party was against them at first, laughed my ass off, but they're super two-faced. Yeah, there's been well, like I was saying before, politics makes for strange bedfellows, especially in Turkey. But I think the comment is very interesting about now two political blocs forming in Turkey, kind of similar to the US. That was what the commenter was saying. I wouldn't say it's identical to the U.S. by any means. But yeah, so the the the opposition was very, very fractured. Maybe even going back a year ago when funny thing, the nationalists supported Imamoglu on this election. Is that nationalist people? Okay, I don't have such a good take on that. Chime in with your comments if nationalists have been supporting Imamoglu here. Josh, can a dictatorship be viewed a good thing if majority of the sheep is able to eat, travel, enjoy life to some extent, like they should have? Stage two-faced duo. Oh, comments are coming in like crazy. Okay, fine. Dictatorship. Let's go there. I can't. Some nationalists. Thank you. Although I wanted to hit on the. Remind me to get back to this formation of two blocks here. But the question about a dictatorship is very interesting. I'll say it's interesting because I'll give you an anecdote. I was recently in Rwanda. Now, Rwanda is no Turkey. Much different place. It's in East Africa. It's a poor country. However, Rwanda has had staggering growth, staggering economic growth, and arguably development, kind of over the same period Turkey has, although it's been more extended. The 8% or so growth has continued on for a second decade in this current millennium, whereas it hasn't in Turkey. But I bring that up because in Rwanda, they really have a dictator. He may be a benevolent dictator, but Paul Kagame, who's the president of Rwanda and has been for a while, officially since the beginning of this millennium. Kagame wins with like 98% of the vote, 99% of the vote. But he's not loved by everyone, but he's pretty loved. And there's been a lot of economic growth. There's been a lot of innovation, much of which probably should be credited to him because Azerbaijan. We can't get into Azerbaijan and USSR and Armenia right now. We'll save that for another broadcast. Hopefully I'll visit soon. But yeah, so someone was questioning, like, I don't remember exactly what the comment in question was, but it was something along the lines of, can you have a dictatorship and can people be happy? And personally, my politics are not such that I want to live in a dictatorship, but I try to approach these things as a rather neutral journalist who's seen a lot of perspectives. And while I don't have an incredible sense of what all the sentiments are in Rwandan society, but as I was there, I've seen the sense that there's a lot of support, continued support for Paul Kagame, who effectively, at least politically, is a dictator, and that there's been pretty remarkable growth and innovation over his nearly 2-decade rule, and it's sustained. It's really sustained, whereas it hasn't sustained here in Turkey. But if we're going to compare Turkey to Rwanda and Erdogan to Kagame, then we got to note the starting point. So Turkey wasn't so hot economically 20 years ago, but its starting point was still much higher than Rwanda. If you look at where Rwanda is coming from, this year, by the way, marked the 25th anniversary of the genocide. In some countries, democracy does not work. Rest enough, like indeed African countries or Pakistan. Well, yeah, I guess part of the answer to the original question is that there are a lot of countries where people just aren't so support. I don't know if democracy is the right. I guess you're taking some dictatorship people have. I don't know if democracy is the proper term, as in some countries, a lot of people are very supportive of authoritarianism if they get the authoritarian that they like in power, as seems to be the case in Rwanda, as arguably was the case in a former country pretty close to here, that being Yugoslavia. I've spent a lot of time in the former Yugoslavia, and people back in the days of Tito, not all of them were happy. Some of them were in prison camps. real prison camps, not like what we're talking about in the US right now, but that's a side note. But yeah, there were a lot of people who were happy under Tito's dictatorship, and nowadays there are a lot of people in the former Yugoslavia who are still nostalgic for the years of Tito, for the years of a different kind of dictatorship, for socialism, etc. So to answer the question, yes, we win Turkey, win nation, win community, win. Who wins? I don't think it's about people. I think it's more about freedoms, the press and speech. All right, let's shift over to, so dictator is just another word for slave master. All countries have their dictators, some just more cruel than others. Personally, I tend to agree with that comment quite a bit. Yeah, so are you Jewish? Yes, I'm Jewish. I'm very open about that. Not very religious, though. Erdogan is not a dictator, but he have an iron fist because of 20-year rule like Napoleon. Yeah, so often, especially when discussing Turkey, democracy gets conflated with freedom or various liberties and institutions. And people frequently talk about the erosion of democracy. And sometimes you should not even talk about Turkey. Okay, fine. Don't listen to me if you don't want to hear me talk about Turkey. What was I saying? So if I were to compare the excitement about Turkey, the excitement about elections in Turkey to other countries, this broadcast is not about Israel. If you want to talk about Israel, go on some other broadcast that's about Israel. Anyway, getting off track. Yeah, so the point I'm going to make more succinctly is that of all the countries I've traveled to, and especially ones where I've seen elections, I don't think I've seen a country where people are more excited about elections and voting than in Turkey. And if I were out in the streets right now, I'd probably be continuing to get that impression, although I don't know what's going on with the celebrations. Maybe someone can chime in if we've got any updates about that. So on the one hand, I would agree that institutions such as the press, such as the independent judiciary, have been somewhat eroding in recent years in Turkey, especially in the aftermath of the coup attempt a few years ago. Time flies. Now, does that mean democracy is going away? It really depends on how you define democracy. If guys stop talking about things that are irrelevant. So yeah, I find in one sense, if we're just talking about voting for who's in power, people in Turkey are as democratic, as excited about democracy as anywhere I go, any country I cover. I think that's enough about the democratic point. Maybe to discuss freedoms a little bit. Yeah, I wouldn't shy away from saying that there's been an erosion of freedoms in Turkey in recent years. There have been countless people across so many sectors going to jail, largely for their political beliefs. It will be interesting to see if that continues in the aftermath of this election, how Erdogan responds to this loss. Maybe he goes in the other direction. Maybe Turkey's is life environment journalist. Yeah, actually, I was about to get into journalism. So there's been incredible pressure on the press here in Turkey. There have been major news outlets that have been outright confiscated or taken over or turned into pro-government outlets. Now, I understand that there are various outlets with connections to groups that are literally battling the Turkish government or are connected with Gulen. But regardless, and regardless of whether that's been used as an excuse or not, there's been significant pressure placed on the press in Turkey in recent years. So indeed, Erdogan will have to be less radical now that he keeps losing, in my opinion, to the beginning and end. I guess that's the million-dollar question. Does Erdogan double down on his policies and attitudes and arguably repressions of recent years, or does he back off? But what would backing off signify? If he backs off and tolerates more and more criticism of him, then is his rule going to erode more and more and more, and the popularity of Imamoglu, is it going to continue to rise? I can't tell you what's going to happen, and that's kind of why I always come back to the economy as the wild card or X factor, because I don't know how.
Can you do me a favor?
Quick! I'm live. I'm around town, so.
So will you not share this after you finish it, or will you delete the part that you?
I can't do that. I'm live. I told you I'm live. Sorry. Okay. Sorry for the quick hiccup. Turkey is democratic and Turkish people loves Erdogan, but this election for Istanbul not present. Okay, that's interesting, and probably we're going to get some debate in the comment stream over that issue. Speak for yourself. Yeah, the debate has already begun. But I think that the interesting point that this commenter raises is how much is this reflective merely of the people in Istanbul, which is different than rural Turkey, is different than most of the country, and how much is it reflective of the sentiments and maybe going to turn his roots when he's pro-EU and try to appeal to secular voters. That would be very interesting. I'm going to respond to that momentarily. First, yeah, so how much is this reflective of the current tide in Turkey as a whole, or perchance is Istanbul not so reflective of the country as a whole, and maybe perchance he who controls Istanbul does not necessarily control Turkey. But the comment about Erdogan, like, will now Erdogan go back to being pro-EU? I think we need one world ruler, aka world order. It's easier to control the sheep. I sense a little sarcasm in that comment, but maybe not. Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, Antalya, you control Turkey. Trust me. Well, if that's the case, that Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir control Turkey, then Erdogan has lost control of Turkey. And in that case, responding to one comment a long time ago, these election results are very, very significant. But I don't think it's definitive that Erdogan's rule has now eroded. As this one commenter who brought up Erdogan possibly going back to being pro-EU, which seems hard to imagine right now, but maybe you're onto something. Those gunshot celebrations, unlike when Erdogan wins. Yeah, last year, thanks for the comments, because I love as I've said repeatedly, I love watching the celebrations here. I love being at Taksim on election night. Last year I did an entire video merely filming the screaming Erdogan supporters chanting Allah Akbar, etc. I love watching that, but I guess I'm of more value in studio tonight. So, we made it, Josh, repeat after me. I don't know what that means. Sorry, my Turkish is no good. Explain to me what that means. But yeah, so Erdogan is a master politician. And he could pivot. Like, as some of the commenters were explaining earlier, he wasn't allied with the nationalists. And he pivoted so that he was allied with the nationalists, and he brought the nationalists under his thumb. And that created a block, or a much bigger support base for him and for his referendum going back a couple years ago. And for Yildirim unsuccessfully in this election. So I'd be interested to hear from anyone chiming in right now. How, if at all, do you think Erdogan might pivot? I would venture to guess that he's got some big pivot up his sleeve. I don't know what it is. I'm no expert prognosticator by any means, but I'm sure Erdogan has some sort of pivot planned, or if not, it means long live and famously supported Ekrem. What does that mean? Sorry. Whatever happened to New World Order progress? Can you please define what you mean by New World Order progress? As I was saying in my long form interview or podcast with Charlie Skelton following Bilderberg, we like to chunk things down a little bit. If by New World Order you mean global governments, or if you mean the advancement of the EU and NATO, I don't know if that's what you mean. Please feel free to elaborate or explain a little more. But if we're talking about the advancement of globalism, if we're talking about the expansion of the Euro-Atlantic Order, primarily the EU and NATO, in recent years, Erdogan's very much been a thorn in the side of those guys trying to expand the Euro-Atlantic Order. Yes, Josh, global governments. Yeah, so I'm addressing that right now. In recent years, Erdogan's really been a thorn in the side of expansion of the Euro-Atlantic Order. Granted, I mean, he alone is not the only guy stopping it. There are all kinds of geopolitical issues. For instance, we're talking about the Caucasus. Georgia has long wanted to join NATO, and it hasn't happened. The same with Ukraine. So, I mean, there are many individual issues. The Western Balkans, former Yugoslavia, which we've been discussing very, very, very briefly, they want to join the EU, and it's not happening. So if it does happen, it's happening very, very slowly. There are all kinds of issues that relate to the slowdown of the expansion of global governments or the Euro-Atlantic Order. Erdogan has been clashing with the EU, more so the US, but it's noteworthy that we bring up the EU because Turkey, well before these Western Balkan states, had already launched membership talks with the EU. Officially, Turkey is still trying to join the EU, but that accession process, there's not been much progress. The accession process has basically ground to a halt in recent years, with the EU Parliament actually trying to completely shut the door on it. Controlled opposition. Who's controlled opposition? The people who do actually control the EU, which isn't really the Parliament in Brussels, they've been keeping the door open. Erdogan needs to cool down. I don't call him dictator, an autocratic leader. Now with this defeat, he can start questioning his puppet advisors. Polarization is damaging our country. So polarization is something that I was discussing earlier. Thank you for your feedback on the topic of global governments. We can get more and more and more into global governments in the future, especially as it relates to EU and NATO expansion, but we're going to try to stick to Turkey now. But what was the someone just polarization? Yeah, my initial takeaway, as in terms of a little political analysis of this election, which I was saying earlier, is that it seems like Erdogan's polarization strategy finally failed, and he's going to have to chart a new course, which I'm sure he will. I don't know what the new political strategy will be in terms of winning back supporters and appealing to people's sentiments, and I don't know what the larger pivot might be. Like someone was saying, is he going to pivot back toward being supportive of the EU, which they need polarization to demonize the opposition like always. Well, yeah, but at the same time, there seems to be somewhat of a consensus that this demonization of the opposition, which I guess had been working for years, finally backfired. But if you disagree with that, please chime in. I could see Erdogan becoming somewhat closer with the EU as the EU continues to have a rift with the US. Someone brought up Iran earlier. I'm not going to get into the whole potential of war with the US and Iran and what's been going on right now with that. But Iran's interesting. We're one country over. Iran is a clear-cut example of the growing separation between the US and the EU. And the EU has, in some instances, been outright siding with Iran over the US. And potentially something similar unfolds with Turkey. There could be another rapprochement. I mean, Erdogan's done that multiple times. You know, he makes an enemy and then he makes a friend. It's done that with Putin and Russia. So maybe, I don't know, maybe Erdogan becomes closer with the EU in the aftermath of this result, and maybe the EU becomes more tolerable. Of course, I think it's bad, but the ignorant part of the base require polarization to keep a secret, at least on their side. I didn't quite catch the whole comment, but he was saying the ignorant base needs polarization. In my time spent in rural Turkey, which I have not spent nearly as much time in rural Turkey as urban Turkey, but yeah, I would say most people there, which are probably part of the base, they don't mind the polarization at all. I don't think they mind the demonization of Kemalists, of secular Turks, of liberal Turks, etc. Back to the EU and Turkey. So I guess rural Turkey is not that different, to be honest. Okay, I need to spend more time there. So what do you think about the real issue Turkey, namely S-400, F-35? Were you watching earlier when we talked about the S-400? I guess maybe I didn't discuss the S-400 enough, but I did bring it up. And by the way, I did discuss it in depth during my recent Bilderberg live stream. Why not pull up, what was the name of that video? Yeah, so after the Bilderberg conference, it's called Bilderberg on my YouTube channel 2 weeks ago. Bilderberg 2019 discussions revealed. Now someone's saying we shouldn't buy S-400. Most of the comments so far have been saying we should buy S-400. If you're Turkish, please chime in on this debate. Anyway, I was saying 2 weeks ago I did a live stream wrapping up my coverage of the Bilderberg conference in Switzerland, which apparently S-400 was a significant topic during that conference, which is, by the way, a conference of Western elites, major Western elites. So I've got a video 2 weeks ago called Bilderberg 2019 Discussions Revealed Conference Wrap-Up Stream. And now someone's saying S-400 better for me. That one goes in depth about the S-400 situation, and I discussed Turkey a lot in that. But okay, let's whoever controls the supply of money rules. My sentiments are with you, Mose AI or whatever it is. Yeah, so let's talk about the geopolitics in the region and go back to that a little more. By the way, thank you very much whoever's tuned in, whoever's leaving likes. That, from what I understand, helps out the video, the channel. Nope, S400 not compatible, our army. Okay, good. Let's get a little debate on that. Yeah, so S400. The one reason why I found the Bilderberg discussions on S-400 so notable, for me, USA doesn't want to lose its monopoly over selling weapons to NATO countries. That's why they're against S-400. Well, yeah, the US, with help, apparently no longer, but with help from Turkey, manufactures the F-35 and sells it. Yeah, major weapon sales at stake. I need to check where I am with time. Okay, so, yeah, that's a concern. But what I was saying, what I found very noteworthy about the discussions at Bilderberg, according to Ms. Selva Demiralp, a Turkish economist, is that there was apparent unanimity among Western elites at this conference, which included, by the way, the head of NATO, Mr. Stoltenberg. He's there and he's a regular at Bilderberg. Apparently there was unanimity against Turkey's purchase of the S-400. So this is a very, very divisive issue, and I would say very problematic for Turkey. So whereas maybe with something like Iran, why not true? Well, why not true? I don't know. Maybe with, say, Iran, that's an example where the EU is straying away from the US, where Europe is straying away from the US. There's probably a lot of alignment there between Europe, Turkey, and Iran. Whereas that's the case with, say, issues having to do with Iran. It's not the case with issues having to do with Russia and NATO, which most notably is the S-400 sale. So according to this account from Bilderberg, Western elites are pretty much unanimously opposed to Turkey getting hold of this S-400, which is not compatible with NATO's systems, which could theoretically allow Russia to better counter those American-made, partially Turkish-made, theoretically, F-35 fighter jets. And that the S-400 issue seems to me like something that's going to continue to create conflict and divide between Turkey and the West as a whole. Whereas on probably a lot of other issues, it's going to be much easier for Turkey, and I guess it's going to be very interesting to see how going forward the EU responds to repressions in Turkey, crackdowns on civil liberties, or maybe Erdogan goes in a different course and quits it. Maybe Erdogan starts respecting civil liberties a lot more, and that indeed allows for Turkey and the EU to go back to being friends somewhat. But as far as I know, Greece, which is another NATO member in the region, bought S-300 before. And did Greece buy it? Never any story without these conflicts, they would have no power. I see. By the way, not yet, but pretty soon, I'm going to have to wrap up this stream. I don't know, maybe I have another. I was not planning on going this long to begin with, but I guess, you know what, please leave a comment below. Do you appreciate and are you more interested in this form of an election night broadcast, or would you rather me be out at, say, Taksim, walking around with a camera, filming celebrations? Please leave a comment as to what's your preference. NATO should leave Europe. NATO is, the majority of countries in NATO are in Europe. Sorry, I'm multitasking right now. Paying for some delicious chai, which goes to what? Yeah, so these issues that NATO can't leave EU. NATO is very important with regard to the future of Turkey, and I guess you could say vice versa. Turkey is important with regard to NATO should leave North Atlantic. NATO is the North Atlantic. I guess you're saying NATO shouldn't exist. By the way, hi Tom Jode for tuning in. I recognize that name. LOL, what's the reason for NATO then? Yeah. What is the point of NATO if there's no NATO in the North Atlantic? But I think the comment was basically outright opposition to NATO. The celebration would be, thank you, celebration would be interesting being the opposition. I missed it. Sorry. Could you repost that comment about the celebration being interesting? Yeah, I was asking you guys, and by the way, thank you to everyone who's tuned in, everyone who's liking, maybe even sharing. I don't know if anyone's sharing this. Apparently that helps. I'm no master YouTuber. For the first time now, I can say I'm faced with YouTube censorship. YouTube outright removed one. The celebration would be interesting, being the opposition, at least for Americans to watch. I think Turkish viewers would be more interested in your discussion. Okay, you know what? Yeah, I'm used to watching the AKP celebrate. American prefers the discussion as well. Turkey makes the best tea in the world, by the way. Thank you. Thank you for ever saying you're doing great. Yeah, we're 80 minutes in now. My gosh. Well, are you in Istanbul? Yes, I'm in Istanbul. That's why I'm asking. I could go out to Taksim, show us the... All right, so now someone wants me to... I want to see the streets as well, but most of all, I want to be of service to you. And if most of you would prefer that we have this discussion, then let's have the discussion. I've been out at Taksim many times on election night watching people celebrate. Turkey's a great country. It's one of my favorite countries in the world, not just Istanbul, as terms of where I like to be here. Yeah, I've seen the celebration before. I have not seen major CHP celebration. Go to... You're in Taksim. Right now I'm not in Taksim, or by Taksim, although I'm staying by there, so I should be, kind of. But yeah, so if most of you guys prefer having the discussion, then the discussion is. Most of all, I want to be of service in my election coverage, and if more people prefer discussion, then discussion it is. This do not show Taksim, LOL. I guess going back to democracy and autocracy or dictatorship, this is a dictatorship. I am the dictator, but I'm the Kagame-style benevolent dictator, and if most of you want discussion, discussion it is. There's only 20 of us. The celebration happens once. The discussions can take place anytime. Can you say this? I can't say that. Someone needs to... Ekrem Imamalu Love. Someone needs to teach me Turkish. Well, I could also go out and do a live stream later. It's only 10:30. Presumably, it's Istanbul. People celebrate all night. Presumably, usually, from my experience covering elections, usually the peak of the celebration out at Taksim, somewhere around 11 or even 12. Merhaba. I can say merhaba. Sen nasılsın? But that might be different now because this is... oh, that was Ekrem Imamlu's catchphrase. My bad. My coverage of this election has been somewhat lackluster. Yeah, past experience, the maraba to everyone tuning in. The celebrations tend to peak around 11 or maybe midnight, but this is different because we have results right away. Unlike with a national election, there are not many results to report, to keep track of, and there's a clear winner tonight, which is kind of a change of pace, kind of not. At least there's a change of pace in terms of the mayoral election. What other key topics? Let's say we'll do this maybe another half hour most. Discussions help see points of view and share. Okay, so we're having a discussion. Maybe I'll keep this going for 30 minutes at the most. What are some other... was the winner the same guy from Bilderberg? No one from... Okay, Bilderberg, we'll go there. No one from... thank you. The winner was not Mamlu, only the win is believers in democracy in Turkey. Hey, you know what, if you agree that today was a win for democracy in Turkey, please chime in with your comment. If you disagree, chime in as well. Bilderberg. So, no, Imam, have you talked about the repeat of only the mayoral election, not the elections for districts, city, parliament? I'm only... sorry, I'm not up to date with the other stuff. I'm only covering the mayoral election. We can do that another time. Bilderberg, someone asked, I'll cover it very briefly. No, Imamoglu was not the guy at Bilderberg this year. Outside coverage does not need to be live streamed. Just grab someone from the winning campaign, get a comment on what the victory, maybe you can get the new mayor. Get the new mayor, maybe the next Erdogan. That would be nice. I'm not counting on it, but that would be very nice. What did happen at Bilderberg this year is there were several Turks there, as is often the case, and they were pretty much all aligned, if not outright members of the CHP, the CHP, which is Imamoglu's party. So those attending Bilderberg this year, maybe not Ms. Demiralp, I don't know if she takes a stance. It was the victory of democracy, not only CHP, but also Kurds. Some AKP followers and other minorities voted for Ekrem. Thank you for the comment. Yeah, the Turkish contingent at Bilderberg this year, as is, I would say, tends to be the case, but not entirely, because there have been ministers from Erdogan's government who've come in the past. But the contingent this year, which is led by Koç, a Turkish billionaire, yeah, they're pretty much aligned with the opposition, which has now won Istanbul, and based on the saying, as goes Istanbul, goes Turkey, or something like that, based on that, which we're kind of debating whether or not it's going to happen, Bilderberg, I would infer, is the Bilderbergers, the Turkish contingent at Bilderberg this year, is probably pleased with the results. I'm staring at my YouTube channel, my old videos, or recent videos, and one, for instance, Metin City, who's not a politician, he's a robotics engineer, and I think a world-class one at that. There was a guy at the airport who asked a question. Yeah, it's him. I'm bringing him up right now. Metin City.